following program is exclusively produced and distributed by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc., all rights reserved. Hi, Golden Age film fanatics, and welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. My name is Dick Dinman, and our goal is to become your exclusive guide to the very best of the Golden Age classics coming out on DVD. We'll have reviews, breaking news of upcoming releases, plenty of surprise guests, and a special feature devoted to the great Golden Age film composers, which we call CineMusic. So let's turn on the marquee and lights, camera, action. It's time for Dick's Picks, in which I get to shine the spotlight on one of my Dick's Picks of the week. One of the greatest and most influential sci-fi films of all time, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, in which plant-like extraterrestrials have invaded Earth, replicating human beings in giant seed pods and taking possession of their souls.
Will you tell these fools I'm not crazy? Make them listen to me before it's too late! Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
No, you've got to get out of here, please!
They come from another world, spawned in the light years of space, unleashed to take over the bodies and souls of the people of our planet, bringing a new dimension in terror to the giant super scope screen.
It's whatever intelligence or instinct it is that can govern the forming of human flesh and blood out of thin air is fantastically powerful, beyond any comprehension.
A cursed, dreadful, malevolent thing was happening to those he loved.
This isn't just an ordinary body, is it?
I never saw one like it. It looks unused.
Now an undreamed of horror makes her life and love a vortex of fear.
Where do they come from?
I don't know.
Suddenly, while you're asleep, they'll absorb your minds, your memories.
I don't want any part of it.
You're forgetting something, Miles.
What's that?
You have no choice.
From city to city, an incredible, hysterical panic spreads. As the unimaginable becomes real, the impossible becomes true.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Take it from me, Double D. Invasion of the Body Snatchers has never looked and sounded as great as it does in this stunning new Kino Lorber'S 4K Blu-ray incarnation, even as we speak. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. And I'm so pleased to have as my returning guest today none other than the DVD savant himself, Glenn Erickson, whose riveting new book, Sci-Fi Savant, Classic Sci-Fi Review Reader, covers with great wit and insight 116 classic sci-fi movies, including, of course, our subject for today, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Stay tuned for more Dick's Picks, coming up on DVD Classics Corner on the Air very soon. Glenn Erickson, welcome to DVD Classics Corner on the Air. It's been some time since you've been a guest on the show, and I'm delighted to have you back.
Well, you picked a very good opportunity for it. Thank you.
Well, I sure did. One of the greatest sci-fi films ever made, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which has just been released in a very, very good transfer. Would you agree on that?
I absolutely agree. It's lovely. Terrific.
I can't think of any science fiction film which has caused more debates, more interpretations, more significances applied by viewers, sometimes highly contradictory. And on one level, people are saying, well, it's a comment on the dangers of 50s communism. On the other level, they're saying it's an attack on the blacklist. Also, it's being mentioned as a comment on 50s conformism. And the interesting thing is, I transferred the Laserdisc of Invasion of the Body Snatchers to DVD recently, and in an interview, Don Siegel doesn't know what everyone is talking about. He says, I just wanted to make a good scare film. What do you think is the real scoop on this Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
Well, I think Walter Wanger?
Yes.
I think Walter Wanger,
the producer,
recognized originally this story as being something that was very appropriate for the times, with this general fear and paranoia, and the new concept of paranoia for the 50s, where there is some thing out there which is distorting the world and your feelings and making things odd and making you feel like you don't fit, even though you're in the middle of this very affluent society here in America. And the original story is more of just a almost like a Robert Heinlein, the Puppet Master's takeover plot from outer space or something.
Mm-hmm.
But in the movie, they tamped it down quite a bit and made it simply a story about people losing their humanity to a different kind of organism that takes away their feelings and takes away their emotions. And that allows it to be interpreted almost any way you want. It's something that's taking something essential away from you, as if whatever problems we have are coming from without rather than from within. So obviously when the psychiatrist, tells him this psychobabble about how, you don't need love, you don't need emotions, that sounds like some kind of ideological alternative to what we know. Sounds very much like, communism, which is supposedly against religion and against individual initiative, and it's all for the group.
Yes, but couldn't it also be the reverse, which is an attack on the Hollywood blacklist?
That is sort of there, because it's the conformism. The people who, the idea is that all the intellectuals are the ones who are under attack in the movie. It's a doctor and a writer, people of imagination, and the pod people immediately go for the figures of authority, and I guess they've just reached this psychiatrist as well, another doctor, so they're trying to get all the important people wrapped up into their, pod life, or taken over or duplicated, as you say. So that what you're left with is a few people who seem to think they have the answers, but they're enemies all around them, and all the enemies want for them is to be quiet and conform and not rock the boat. Things are so much easier, they say, if you just give up and join us,
Well, the wonderful thing,
very much what the intellectuals and the blacklisted people felt like they were victims in that way.
the wonderful thing about this film, as well as, and I've made for this occasion, I've made a list of my favorite sci-fi films, and they all have something in, my favorites all have something in common in that they always at their head have really great relationships between the man and the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about Village of the Damned and the Day the Earth Caught Fire, which are two of my very, very favorite sci-fi films.
Yes.
And here, too, they establish such terrific chemistry between Kevin McCarthy and Dana Winter, who, by the way, I don't think she's ever looked as luscious as she does in this film. And that makes it all the more frightening. All of my favorite pictures are basically sci-fi films. They're essentially mainstream. But what they take great pains to do is establish relationships and then go forward with the threat.
Well, all the relationships in this movie are still almost related to the threat because your two lovers are disillusioned divorcees.
Which,
They're
by
unhappy.
the way, is totally unique to this particular film.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know of any other movie that isn't just a soap opera about, two people who are divorced and linking up with somebody else.
Exactly.
But they don't really have a great deal of, they aren't particularly optimistic about, romance in a way. They're hoping something will happen, but they aren't, happy young people. They seem to, have a weight of the world on their shoulders.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But they are seeking something which is about to be totally taken away from them.
Right. Well, they find value in it as soon as it is threatened,
Exactly.
obviously.
Which is very interesting. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
But you have, like, his nurse, who's this lovely lady who, she ends up, looks like she's giving a pod to her own child. And everyone's father is relatives are betraying each other, and they're all part of this vast conspiracy, which, of course, sounds like it's a communistic thing. But at the same time, the conspiracy is already reaching out to where, if only you could get to the FBI, things might be solved. But you really have no. The conspiracy is so powerful. You have no confidence that it can be stopped any way whatsoever, which is the scary part of the story. It seems very credible that a takeover like this would work very quickly.
Is it conceivable that a talented and intelligent and resourceful director like Don Siegel would be able to create such an effective piece and yet be unaware of the potential implications beneath the surface? Is that possible?
I think he was trying to avoid a can of worms and get in a big discussion. Directors do that very often when they don't want to get into the arguments,
Mm-hmm.
Robert Wise will deny that this movie is really about this subject. It's about something else because he doesn't want to get into the controversy or wants to stay out of it and let the movie speak for itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more fascinated by the fact that that Don Siegel, it may be his best directed movie. It's his most human movie.
The first time I saw it, I was a kid, and it was a revival, a double feature with a sci-fi film called World Without End.
Oh, my.
And the only thing I remembered about World Without End is how transfixed I was by Nancy Gates' gams. But I knew, as young as I was, 9 or 10 or something, I knew that Invasion of the Body Snatchers was something very, very special.
Oh, yes. I was a young teenager, and I think I saw it on television for the first time, unfortunately, with commercials, and I was still very nervous and very disturbed by it. It was like I'd never seen anything with that level of ability to get under your skin, the paranoia aspect.
And the performances down the line from King Donovan and Carolyn Jones. Such great care is taken visually with this film and with the performances. In many respects, it's kind of unique. And isn't it interesting that no sci-fi film has been remade as much? I believe Invasion of the Body Snatchers was remade 3 times.
Yes, at least 3 times.
Each time to diminishing effect as far as I was concerned.
Pretty much, yes.
But it just shows you how incredibly effective this film was. Would you rate it among your very, very top sci-fi films?
It is among the very, very top sci-fi films, and it's because in a way it really it's almost hard to define as a genre picture because it is, since there are no monsters almost except you see these pods transforming at one point.
Mm-hmm.
There are no monsters. It is almost like a straight film noir story. You only have a couple of instances of evidence to suggest that this isn't some kind of crazy illusion happening to these people. It could be, people can't decide whether they're crazy or whether they're actually experiencing these things. And the lighting and the tension is far more sophisticated than your average science fiction movie of the time, which is more interested in monsters and mass destruction.
It's a chilling film. I recommend it heartily to my audience.
What I've never heard anybody come up with is a decent title for the movie. Don Siegel wanted to call it Sleep No More, and there was another title called No More Tears, and they all sound, terribly pretentious and ill-fitting, sound like bad Shakespeare.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers is not the perfect title for this film. I will say this, because what it does in a way is it demeans the incredible care and quality that went into this film. So I can understand Don Siegel not being pleased with it, but I can't come up with a title.
Exactly. I've yet to hear one that really, captures the whole idea. It's obviously went for that because it describes the movie, and Body Snatchers, people knew what that was, so it's very hard to define a movie like that in just a couple of words.
And the film, I believe, did do business.
It did quite well, but it was a word-of-mouth hit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't believe it was brought out in any big premiere or anything like that. All the artists usually couldn't afford that, but it hung around apparently for almost a year in being played out. You could see it anywhere from early '56 to almost 1958. It was still in the theaters. Everyone who talks about the later remakes, and the story is very well known, always mentions this as the best version of the story by far.
We pause now for station identification.
DVD Classics Corner on the Air is exclusively produced and released by Dick Dinman's Double D Productions, Inc. All rights reserved. Glenn, I have to tell you something. What you've done here with this wonderful Sci-Fi Savant, classic sci-fi review reader, is created, I think, one of the very, very best books on the subject. And I'll go to someone else. I'll quote someone else here. I'm quoting Joe Dante, who's the film director of Gremlins, Matinee. Here's what he says, and I quote, "When it comes to classic sci-fi movies, it's rare to find much in the way of new insights. But Glenn Erickson, whose fine website, DVD Savant, has produced some of the most enlightening and clear-eyed commentary on the Internet, has gathered together his essays on 116 sci-fi movies, both famous and obscure, into Sci-Fi Savant. It's a treasure trove of ideas, opinions, and research that'll entertain you for hours." Well, it entertained me for days.
Great.
And I have to tell you, this is just a wonderful, wonderful book. Your site, DVD Savant, is the only website that I go to when I want to read reviews of new Blu-rays and DVDs. But you cover every category of film, from foreign, musical, drama, film noir, sci-fi. Am I to assume that sci-fi is your favorite genre, since you have this book focusing on it?
I felt it was the only genre that I could really speak authoritatively about, even though I'm not a researcher. I have some confidence in my opinions about it, and a lot of thought and time, and spent a lot of effort tracking down a lot of obscure titles. So, and since I love the genre so much, it's just very natural and easy to write about it.
What was the first sci-fi film you ever saw?
It was possibly Godzilla on TV, but I think I saw the Japanese movie The Mysterians by myself in a theater when it was new. And that's like 1959, so that shows you how old I was.
I do believe you spend more time on sci-fi than any other genre.
Well, if they bring out a classic sci-fi film or one that's even decent, I'll definitely cover it. So it looks like I cover that genre more than anything else. I think that's what happens. I just love the sense of mystery and imagination, and I like some of the political aspects of the genre too. The way it reflects the culture and the ideas in politics of the time that it was made. The genre really exploded finally in the 50s because of the politics and because of the fact that people were looking for scary fantasies that were about the real world but not really. But also because the technology had caught up. The 50s was probably the first decade in which Hollywood was able to make special effects that actually approached realism, photorealism. So all of a sudden, it was possible to do impossible things like giant spiders and spaceships and monster robots walking around, where it pretty much looked, real. The average moviegoer might not be able to see the illusion being done. And that gives these movies from the 50s a very surreal quality. And that comes out very strongly in the Universal movies you like, when you have a giant tarantula walking through the desert, or if you remember those giant crystals that fall over, it looked very real.
It did. But on the other hand, let's just take The Incredible Shrinking Man, which is a terrific film with some really excellent special effects. But I can go back to 1940 when Paramount did a very similar film in color yet with Albert Decker. Was it called Dr. Cyclops?
Yes, it was.
And it was a huge financial failure.
Right. Well, Dr. Cyclops, its one illusion was the illusion of little people running around trapped in a room. And people had seen that in the 1920s with Laurel and Hardy. They'd seen it in a movie called Devil Doll, and there weren't not much else of anything of importance or interest was happening in that movie. Whereas Shrinking Man was really about the experience of being lost and shrinking and seeing your world dissolve around you and feeling totally abandoned and wondering, what the future held, what, scary future was in store for you, which is very much what the spirit of 50s science fiction is. There's this looming, menacing future on the horizon, and you don't know what it is.
And what's fascinating is during the 40s and even the early 50s, the very early 50s, sci-fi was considered to be, by the mainstream filmmakers, highly disreputable. And I particularly think of The Thing from Another World.
Yes.
Now, I met Ken Tobey about 2 or 3 years before he died. And I said to Ken Tobey, all right, who really directed The Thing? And he looked me in the eyes, and he said, what do you think? And I said, to me, it looks down the line like Howard Hawks. And he said, you're absolutely right.
Well, Howard Hawks was fascinated by science fiction, and he wanted to make a movie like that, and he even wanted to make a second one, I just read. But he's a very good Hollywood businessman, and he realized that when you make a science fiction movie, the director isn't the star, and the actors aren't the stars. Actors immediately learned that it was not a very good career idea to get involved with a science fiction movie. It was always the story and the special effects and the theme. So, he probably made a lot of money from The Thing, but he almost didn't want to have his name that strongly associated with it. He didn't want it to be on his director's list of his personal directed projects.
Because the whole concept of sci-fi was considered to be lower grade.
Perhaps, or that was a perception that was starting out at the time, because literally he made The Thing right at the beginning. And between 1950 and I'd say 1954, some of the genre was dominated by big budget movies from big studios. And as soon as all of a sudden the small guys came in, like your Roger Cormans and your Herman Cohens, and were able to make movies for a couple of $100,000 that made just as much money, then there was no point in spending, $500,000 on something expensive if you could do something cheap and get the same money back. It's all an economic equation.
Lastly, we've been talking about your book, The Sci-Fi Savant. Tell our audience how they can get it.
It's available basically through Amazon. It is I wouldn't call it published on demand because they've got quite a few copies ready to go. Or if they go to DVD Savant, they can buy a copy directly from me, and I'll autograph it. I only say that because I've gotten, 25 requests for that, over the last year. I've been happy to do that as well. If they go to DVD Savant and just write me.
And I'll repeat, DVD Savant, for me, is the very best DVD and Blu-ray review site, so much so that it's spoiled me for other sites. Keep on doing what you're doing. It's a privilege to have you on the show, and I'm so glad we finally got together again.
Okay, well, thank you. It's a great pleasure.
Well, that's my show for today. DVD Classics Corner on the Air is conceived, written, produced, and directed by me, Double D. And if you'd like to hear some of my older, vintage shows, please go to www.dvdclassicscorner.net, where in addition to the broadcasts, you'll find hundreds of my print reviews of classic DVD releases. So, until next week,
keep well, keep happy, and keep listening.